I'm starting to see a lot more people acknowledging that slugs are pretty nice in Warzone, at least on the Jak-12. In fact, getting gameplay for this video, I actually ran into someone actually using slugs on the Jak-12. I mean, what the hell? That never happens. Of course, it's probably just chance and coincidence, but today we're going to focus on the doof because, to be honest, after the initial learning curve, this thing can be even better than the Jak-12 with slugs. It has some quirkiness to it, but it's got the power and the range and the time to kill that a great shotgun should have. As you saw from the beginning clips, yes, 2 shots from that range is entirely possible, just really unlikely, but I still wanted to show that the power is there and technically you can get 2-shot kill headshots from that sort of range. As always though, we'll get into why slugs are more difficult to use and why novice or beginner players may struggle with it, but I'm saying this now, slugs in the R9-0 can absolutely be amazing for great players, and currently I think they're a bit slept on. Now I am having more fun with these than I am with the Jak-12 slugs, just for the record, after giving them more time and actually practicing with them. Damn, that's all I gotta say. Now, remember why the Dragon's Breath R9-0 wasn't quite top tier? It was more inconsistent than ever, and if you don't hit those 2 shots, you're pretty much dead. Now, take that risk and that reward and multiply it by like 4. You have one solid projectile with varying degrees of spread, where if you hit your 2 shots, you won't even need to touch the Dragon's Breath R9-0. Like with the other shotgun slugs, on paper, this thing is god tier, but of course it's easier said than done to actually use it. But let's just get into it, starting with damage and shots to kill and all that jazz. Also, excuse some of the gameplay if you notice it lagging some. It's been bad the past few days and I have no idea why. Anyway, the max damage range for R9-0 slugs is about 2.6 meters. People may remember this as the same range that the Jak-12 slugs had for their max range. The difference here though is that the R9-0 does over 250 health for a headshot in this range, which means yes, up to 2.6 meters, you can one-tap headshot fully armored players. But just like the Jak-12, 2.6 meters is spitting distance, or kissing distance. It's just super small, and you really don't find yourself in engagements that close, so it's probably not going to happen often. Once you hit past 2.6 meters, it will always take 2 headshots. And it seems like no matter what, it will always be 2 headshots to kill at pretty much any ranges. At the ranges I checked, it was going for really far, but practically, you won't need to be trying to hit targets from that distance, like hundreds of meters, but it's entirely possible if you want to go for trick shots or something like that. Now, past 2.6 meters and up to about 10 meters, you can deal around 128 points of damage to stomach and around 145 to the chest, and like always, these numbers are hand tested, but basically up to 10 meters, stomach and up, will always be 2 shots to kill. Already, this is looking better than the Dragon's Breath R9-0. If you remember, you could get inconsistent 2 shots up to about 9 meters if you're aiming down sights with Dragon's Breath. Now with slugs, it's a lot more consistent and it hits hard, but it's definitely harder to use than the Dragon's Breath version. Now outside of that 10 meters up to about 32 meters, you're going to need more than 2 stomach shots to kill, but chest shots will still kill in 2 shots up to this 32 meter range. The thing is, in this range, you have to hit chest or head for 2 shots. If you hit chest and stomach, it's so close to killing someone, but it doesn't quite reach it. You'd have to hit head and stomach, but ideally, just aim for chest and up. So to summarize the damage, you can 2-tap fully armored players up to about 32 meters with well-placed shots. Now with an RPM of about 300 rounds per minute for each little burst, your time to kill is roughly 200 milliseconds. And at that distance, that is absolutely insane. I do have to mention though that damage to arms and limbs is absolutely atrocious. We're talking like 49 damage for point blank leg shots and about 99 for an arm shot, and that just gets worse over range. So if you get a weird hit marker from using these, most likely you accidentally hit the arm or something like that. I guess another good reason to aim chest level, really. With attachments, you can bump this range up, but not by much. Attachments on the R9-0 don't really do too much for it, but they do kind of help. The tac sentry barrel and the choke and monolithic together take your range up by about 12%, so you'd get 2-shot stomach shots at about 11.2 meters, with 2 chest shots going up to about 36 meters roughly. Now the range is pretty amazing, so range increasing attachments aren't super needed, but since there aren't really other great attachments, sometimes you just run it because why the hell not? Now you know why slugs are so great on the R9-0, but let's get into why they're really tough to use and why you may struggle using them at first. If you've seen virtually any slug video by me, you'll definitely be having some deja vu when you hear what I'm about to say. First off, slugs have very slow muzzle velocity when compared to traditional guns. You don't really notice it too much up close, but further out it's definitely more noticeable. The only time it's ever really a problem up close is when you have people moving around chaotically or jumping around, like that one person in the rose skin always does. I checked it at about 100 meters to make it more apparent, and you'll see there is some noticeable travel time as well as some bullet drop, which means in some ranges you may have to compensate and aim a bit higher to hit their chest and their head, but at about 30-ish meters it normally isn't too bad, and usually you can aim directly at head level and get that headshot. In terms of attachments to help with this, we don't have the Marauder suppressor, which really helps the Jak-12's muzzle velocity, and sadly there is no attachment with the R9-0 that really helps it too much. They definitely weren't really that consistent, at least. Sometimes the choke would help maybe a frame or two, then it'd get worse, same with the monolithic suppressor, which seemed to be more consistent but only helped by like a frame or two at that 100-meter range. For barrels, it's basically the same thing. They didn't really seem to make your travel time any better, and on average, the time it took to get the hit from the time the shot was fired at about 100 meters for all attachments was right around 20 to 21 frames at 60 frames per second. One other thing we have to keep in mind with slugs is the small spread they can tend to have, which is helped by using a choke or a bigger barrel, and this is something you could read in the description of slugs themselves, saying they are inaccurate but hard hitting. Now with the R9-0, again, attachments didn't really seem to do too much for the deviation of the slug. You can see the choke does help, but compared to the other shotguns, it's not that much. Yeah, the Gemini barrel is still probably the worst choice because it definitely makes your slugs veer off more often, but if you think you need a barrel to make it better, you really don't. The Tac Sentry doesn't help that much. If you combined it with the choke, it would be the best it could be, but it's already kind of decent enough at ranges you should be using this thing. Personally, I always use a suppressor for this gun, but I'll get into that later. And again, with slugs, we now have to worry about recoil more than before. The R9-0 can shoot twice really fast, and that second shot will fly up and it goes towards the right, I've noticed. If you spam those two shots, that second shot is going to be hard to get on target at further ranges. If you look at a comparison between some attachments, the Merc foregrip actually helped decently compared to the other attachments on average, so I think running the Merc foregrip isn't really a half bad idea. You could just not run a recoil attachment if you can handle it, but I strongly recommend at least one. At least for me it helps, but some of you out there could probably manage it just fine. In all honesty, pacing your shots is probably recommended, but there are some cases where you just need to fire both shots super quick, usually up close when someone comes up to you, so that's when these recoil attachments really help. Like I said, the Merc foregrip alone should be fine, and it's really as good as it's going to get. So now we have an idea of why slugs on the R9-0 are both amazing and incredibly strong, and we also know why not everybody could probably make these things work to their full capacity. As with the Jak-12, this sort of setup is pretty high risk, high reward, but I do think the reward is pretty great, especially compared to the base R9-0 and even the Dragon's Breath version of the gun. If you want consistency, you have it, but you have to be able to aim for it. Now the way I recommend playing with this is you want to pace yourself a bit. Spamming those two shots right after another is probably going to make you miss a few shots, and with a gun like this that has a huge delay between bursts, you do not want to miss. So line up your shots and pace them so that the gun comes back down after that initial recoil. Also, I recommend using a silencer. For one, it's nice to be off the minimap, but also chances are you are going to be missing a few or a lot of your shots, especially at first, and having a suppressor really helps keeps the enemies a bit more unaware of where you're missing your shots from. Now let's get into a class setup. First off, the one I think is the strongest is with the monolithic suppressor. No barrel attachment here, so don't worry about that. The 5mm laser, the Merc foregrip, slugs of course, and the stippled grip. Now since we have no barrel, we don't have an ADS penalty, but we do have the monolithic suppressor, which helps with the range about 4% and keeps us more quiet, of course. The 5mm laser is great because it helps reduce the sprint to fire speed, which is always a plus, but you could also use the tack laser if you prefer. Now, stipple grip helps with the sprint out time and the ADS speed, and then the Merc foregrip was a good choice for me because it helped ADS speed and then it made the shots noticeably easier to control in the event that I needed to spam them. If you want to use an optic, just take out the stippled grip tape, and honestly, the class should work fine because I think that the iron sights are a little bit obtrusive, but overall I found them manageable to work with at these closer ranges. And the reason for no barrel is because even though they do help with range, I find that slugs already have great range, and there really is no reason to use them since they don't really even give you that much more range. I'm not going to say it's a terrible attachment and never run it, but you could take it or leave it in my opinion, and there's probably better attachments to use. Overall, this gun is extremely fun to use, but it can be really difficult and pretty unforgiving. Is it better than Dragon's Breath? Honestly, it may be harder, but yeah, I kind of think it is, at least consistency-wise and with the power behind it. But because of the difficulty in use, it may not be perfect for everyone, and someone who sits in the corner with a Dragon's Breath R9-0 is probably going to have a hard time using these bad boys. So if I had to rank them again, these are definitely a step up from where I had them, but I still don't think they're quite top tier, god tier, just because of how difficult they can be to use. But if you can manage it, then absolutely give it a shot. These things are just too much fun, and it's so satisfying to blast someone with a rose skin in the face with these things. And that's just about gonna do it for this video. If you've tried these slugs before on the R9-0, let me know what you guys thought. And if you haven't, try them out and then get back to me. Now be sure to subscribe if you want to see more COD shotgun goodness. And with all that being said, I want to wish you all a happy day/night, and I'll see you in the next video.